It's the Blues Rock Show with Pete Francis and Willie Witten.
Welcome to the Blues Rock Show. Pete Francis alongside Willie Witten. Before we get started, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And make sure to hit that like button. It really helps so more people can see the videos. All right, Willie, we got a big week coming up because Eric Clapton has a new album coming out this week on Friday, the Lady in the Balcony Lockdown Sessions. Here's my question to you, Willie. Is it still a big deal when Eric Clapton puts out an album?
I think it is. I think it always will be. I think it'll vary from person to person. I think the old time Eric Clapton folks may sit there like myself and say, oh, I'm not interested. But guess what, Pete? In secrecy, I'm going to check it out. And I'll probably like it more than I think I will like it. But I'm pretty sure it's not going to be one of my favorites. I think he's generated a lot of publicity around it. He's had some controversial views during this pandemic. I think that's going to get a lot of attention. I think it's going to get a lot of listens. How is it going to be? I don't really know. I think that we've said this before. Is it Cream? Is it Derek and the Dominoes? Is it Ocean Boulevard, Slow Hand? No. But he's still great. And for his age, gosh, he's still got a pretty darn good voice. He's one of those guys who has changed his game to adapt to the fact that he's not as fast of a player. He's maybe not as aggressive as a singer player, but he does a good job. I can't imagine it being a bad album, but I'll listen to it, but I'm not really, I'm not excited. I'm not ecstatic. I'm not going to rush to go, Pete. How about you? Are you jived and excited? Or are you just sort of more like in my camp where I'll listen to it or,
Well, we've mentioned this before, Willie, but he doesn't have to put out anything at this point. And I think part of the reason maybe why some people aren't super excited is because he has released so much material over the years. And the expectations at this point would be so high that how is he going to do something better than the material that he's already put out?
Right.
But for Clapton, at this point, he doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. So the fact that he's still putting out new albums is a credit to him. And I think that's great. There's not going to be a bunch of new music on this. This album, pretty much for the most part, is music that he's already released. It's just different versions and covers of some songs that he likes. So it's not anything groundbreaking, but if you look at some of these music videos that he's already put out from this album, I've liked it. I think it's good stuff. So if you're a fan of his, why not check it out? I think the music videos that he's put out so far are really good. So, hey, why not?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think when we talk Clapton, we talk some of these older artists, you tend to take the side that also Davey Knowles, when he was with us a few weeks ago, sort of gently, I think, reminded all of us, and maybe it was pointed a bit at me because I'd been critical of Clapton. Clapton did an awful lot for the genre. Clapton this, may not be that, may not have this what he used to be, but you hit the nail on the head as you do so many times, Pete. I think he doesn't have to do a darn thing. The man's still making music. It's still good music. Maybe I need to cool my jets and just say, hey, listen, take it for what it is, enjoy it, because, Pete, it's Clapton. It's going to be pretty good, right?
Yeah, and different artists have different expectations, Willie. So the bar for Eric Clapton is a lot higher than it is for pretty much any other artist, especially in this genre. Yeah. So that's why the expectations for a lot of people are so high. And they'll be like, oh, well, this isn't as good as his other stuff. Well, yeah, but the bar is also a lot higher for him than it is for most other artists. So you have to take that into consideration as well. You look at Joe Bonamassa right now, too. The bar is set very high for him. Everyone's expecting greatness. So you do have to take that into account. Different artists, the bar is set higher. For someone like Eric Clapton, the bar is going to be really, really high. So, no, it's not going to be a bunch of new earth-shattering material, but, what he is doing, he's doing very well. So I think it is cool, and if you're a fan, it's something you didn't have before.
Yeah, no doubt. And I feel that same way, too. Some people, there's a Dion album, they pushed that release date coming back because of some logistical issues. Same thing there. I got to get an early listen to that. once again, not groundbreaking. He's got a bunch of friends on, but I'll tell you, I listened to that album, and every time I gave it another spin, it got better and better and better. So I can see that being the same thing true with this Eric Clapton album, right? Come on, I got to lay off Eric Clapton.
Yeah, so Clapton, obviously, very well established, been around for a while. Someone who hasn't been around for too long, but has really been making a lot of waves, especially in the last couple of years, Willie, is Christone Kingfish Ingram.
Yep.
Kingfish having another big year. He released his sophomore album, 662, went to number 1 on the Billboard Blues chart, and actually this past week got back into the number 1 spot. So that kind of goes to show the staying power that Kingfish has. He also released a music video this week for Long Distance Woman. My question for you, Willie, with the success that Kingfish is having, he's already got 2 number 1 albums on the Billboard Blues chart, still in his early 20s. What's kind of the cap for his career? What's his ceiling, Willie? How many number 1 albums do you think he could potentially get?
I don't want to do this because we've spoken before about how he is sort of now, a lot of people are putting him as the torch bearer. He is the savior. It is a lot of pressure. And so I'm going to say this, and I know it adds to the pressure and it's not fair, but if you want my honest answer, there is no number, Pete. I got to see him at the Paramount at Austin, and the show that he played there, and the fact that he's still so young and he just keeps getting better. You look and you think, oh my gosh, the sky sort of is the limit with this guy. The guy, and we talk about this gentleman a lot too, Joe Bonamassa. Who knows who's going to have more number 1s at the end of their career? I like the idea to think that he's probably going to be a guy, if he wants to, who can put out an album yearly and pretty much do what Joe Bonamassa does now. I don't see why not. He has the talent, he's surrounded himself with good people, and he loves what he does. You get those 3 ingredients, and there's really no stopping this guy. He really seems so genuine.
Very humble.
It's so great. He's so humble. His concert presence is great. Pete, I'd say it's 1 number 1 album a year for as long as he decides to keep himself in the game. So however long he plays, I think that's how many number 1s. I hate Kingfish, Christone. I don't mean to add to your pressure, but you're just that good. Pete, do you agree? Am I just being a little bit too big too early on this guy?
Yeah, Willie, I would tend to agree with you on this. Now, we kind of heard the buzz about Kingfish before his debut album came out, but I wasn't super familiar with him before his debut album came out. Now, about 3 weeks before his debut album came out, I had a chance to see him at the Dallas International Guitar Festival, and I was right there in the front, right in front of him, and his performance, Willie, was pretty mind-blowing. And if you look at the talent that was in Dallas that weekend, you had Eric Gales, you had Philip Sace, you had Eric Johnson. I mean, you had some of the heaviest hitters, some of the best guitar players on the planet, all in Dallas that weekend. And catching all those performances, I thought Kingfish was as good as anybody that weekend. And this is when he was 20 years old, Willie. And he was already at this level where I was like, whoa, okay, this isn't just hype. This kid is for real.
No, exactly. It is. He gets a lot of hype because he is that good. It's not hype when you back it up, and he is that good, and he's getting better. His recent album was better than his debut, and for a lot of people, they hit that sophomore slump. His album was better.
And what's crazy is how quickly he has risen. I mean, his ascension is happening very quickly. So just a couple of years ago, he would have been playing in the clubs. But now if you look, he just released a bunch of new tour dates. Now Kingfish is starting to move from the clubs into the theaters. And that is a huge step. That's a step that so many artists in this genre never even get to the point where they're playing in theaters. And now Kingfish, 22 years old, he's already moving into the theaters. I mean, that just kind of shows you how quickly he's really gained a fan base. And he's already got 2 number 1 albums. So at this point, and blues artists, especially when they are younger, do tend to release albums more often than some other genres.
Sure.
So I would expect Kingfish, they're probably going to keep rolling out albums, if not every year, probably every other year.
Sure.
And I would expect that to probably keep up at least through his 20s.
Yep.
So, and the other thing with Kingfish is he doesn't have to write every one of his songs.
No.
You know, he's got collaborators like Tom Hambridge, people like that he can team up with and help write his songs as well. So that kind of takes some of the pressure off of him. He doesn't have to do it by himself. He doesn't have to write all of the songs by himself. And, you know, I think that's a good thing. So that's going to help him as well as far as continuously putting material out there. So, yeah, Willie, I think the sky's the limit now. Will he ever catch Joe Bonamassa? Probably not in terms of number one albums. I don't think anyone's going to catch up with Joe. Let's be honest. I mean, Joe is he's going at a rate where he puts out so many albums that I just don't think anyone's ever going to be able to catch him. But you look at the conversation of some of the other artists, Kingfish definitely has potential to, I would say, get past 10 number one albums. So, I mean, how many artists have done that? So I would say Kingfish definitely, much as you were saying, Willie, I think he can definitely, every time he puts out an album, he can reach number one. So right now, the sky's the limit for Kingfish, and his star just continues to rise.
I'll make a prediction. The last thing I'll say is, you know what? 10 years from now, we'll get a Bob Gersten list of the top 10 guitarists of the 2020s. I'll make this prediction right now. The number one guy on that list is going to be Kingfish.
Wow. That is
I'm saying it now. We
that
got
is
9
bold.
years left, but I'm telling you, it's going to be him. As I said, I sit there on one hand, I say it's not fair. We're putting the pressure on Kingfish as a genre, and I just heaped a bunch
It's
on
not
him.
fair, Willie, and then you make
It's
a
not
statement
fair,
like that, putting more pressure
I
on him.
love the guy. He's so good. Here's something I don't love, Pete, because it's just so sad. No one loves this. A couple of days ago down in Houston at a Travis Scott concert, and I know that's not our genre focus, 8 people died in what essentially was a stampede, a crush accident. 13 people still hospitalized. So we're not even out of the woods as far as the death toll, sadly. We don't tend to see that in blues at all, really, or at least not modern day blues. And even rock these days, more in the past we'd see it, but we rarely see that today either. Pete, I want to ask you 2 questions at once. One is, why is this happening? 2 is, in the blues rock and rock genre, do you think if people crack down, do you think you're still going to allow people to have open range seating on the lawn, seating in the pit? What do you think happens, and why is this genre a little bit different?
Yeah, obviously, first off, Will, I mean, that's just a terrible, terrible situation that you hate to see. As far as why something like this happens, I mean, you just can't say. I mean, this crowd obviously tends to be a bit of a younger crowd, right? So it's not really the older crowd. So I think, you know, that sort of age range, there's a lot more peer pressure, a lot more kind of following the crowd, if you will. And in a situation like this, it's more of a general admission situation where people are trying to then obviously be the first to get to the front row or whatnot. And you don't really see that so much with the blues rock genre and blues. We were talking about theaters. Like if you were to go see Kingfish in a theater, Joe Bonamassa in a theater, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, what have you. For situations like that, you're going to buy a ticket and you get an assigned seat and you're going to go sit in that seat. It's as simple as that.
Yep.
And for this genre, most of the people are going to be seated for a majority of the concert. If you go to a club setting, people are going to be sitting down at tables. It's not so much you have that general admission, everyone's down on the floor, you know, and you kind of alluded to rock music, you know, back in the 90s, especially where you've got the mosh pits going on and all that sort of stuff. You don't really see that with this genre or with blues rock or blues because it tends to be a bit of an older crowd.
Yeah.
And these people, look, they've been there, done that when they were younger.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. So they're not so much like, oh, I got to be first. I got to rush in there. You know what? They're thinking, you know what's nice about today? You can buy tickets in advance. You can get your seats in advance. And then you don't have to worry about that crap, about having to, you know, try to storm in somewhere to get the best seat. And at the end of the day, I mean, I see why when you're younger, people want to be first, right? And they want to have that experience. But I mean, man, I mean, that's just a terrible, terrible situation. And, you know, that it's really sucks, Willie.
Yes, it does. Right. That is without a doubt. The last question I'd ask you, Pete, and everything you said, I agree with. You gave some good reasons why it's different between the crowds. Been there, done that, I think is something I didn't think about, but that's so true. Here's something I will ask you to finish with. In this sort of changing atmosphere with concerts, the pandemic, and already some things we see are changing and are changing back. Some things it feels like they're changing and they're going to stay that way. If, and this is a big if all of a sudden there's a movement because of issues like these, people say, hey, you know what? Like they did in the English Premiership Soccer and other places around the world for sporting events, everything is assigned seating and that becomes the norm. Do you think the rock and blues rock genre and blues genre will follow suit because of maybe like societal peer pressure? Or do you think that they would say like, you know what? We don't need to do this. That's not our genre's problem.
You know, I think as of right now, when you get into the bigger venues where you'd have bigger crowds of people, for the most part, the blues rock genre, there is assigned seating.
Right.
Now, when you get into some places like bars and whatnot, it's
House of Blues.
You know, you might be down on a floor, but there's also not thousands and thousands of people there. You might be at a gig where there's 100 people, okay, 150 people, or 40 people, you know? So I feel like with the numbers, it's not as big of a deal or as big of an issue, rather, in this genre, because generally the shows just, they don't have that many people. So you're not going to have that sort of, oh, we got to rush in sort of situation. So, yeah, I think, you know, at the theaters, you've got all the assigned seating and whatnot. And again, I'll say this again, for a lot of these people, especially people who go to blues and blues rock concerts, these are the type of people who've been going to concerts for a really, really long time. Yeah. And I think for most of them, they don't want to deal with all that rushing to get the best seats. Like, we have the internet. Go order your tickets online and get a seat, you know, and get that taken care of. You don't have to worry about that stuff. Yeah. No. So I think for this genre, I don't think people would have a problem with that.
Yeah, we're pretty mellow.
Yeah. Well, what do you guys think? Let us know down in the comments section below. How many #1 Billboard blues albums do you think Kingfish can get? That's a great question. Let us know down in the comments. And are you looking forward to the new Eric Clapton album? Let us know down in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss a video. And please hit that like button. Willie and I really do appreciate your support, and it definitely helps the visibility for our channel and Blues Rock Review. So thank you very much there. That's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Blues Rock Show. For Willie Witten, I'm Pete Francis. We'll see you next time.